All right, I will call this meeting to order. We'll do a roll call. Kelsey?
Here.
Jenny?
Here.
Glenn?
Here.
Merle?
Here.
Robert? He'll be a few minutes late. Blake?
Here.
And we'll do pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd entertain a motion for an agenda consideration.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in, any discussion? All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, reading. All those opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any public comment? Anyone?
That I know.
No? Okay, just double checking. And we have board communication. I will turn over the first thing to superintendent.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to honor our own Sarah Bailey as the National Art Honor Society Advisor of the Year.
Nice.
And here is what they are going to say about Sarah this weekend down in Eugene. That for more than 2 decades, Sarah has built a thriving art program that empowers students to create, lead, and connect through art. As the founder and advisor of her school's NAHS chapter since 2014, she has guided students in developing their artistic voice and sense of purpose while linking classroom learning to real-world community engagement. Under her mentorship, students have brought creativity to life across their school and community through murals, public art installations, and service projects that reflect the spirit of collaboration and care. And so congratulations, Sarah.
Thank you, thank you.
I did ask Sarah to share a few words about the Art Honor Society and just kind of the work that it does and that she's done, just so that we could learn a little bit more about the arts community. And kind of the work that you've done here, both here and with the society itself.
Okay, I'll come up this.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the National Art Honor Society and we have a chapter here and, it's a lot that we get to do when we get to do it. So, yeah, so for the past 24 years, being the art teacher, being able to engage with the students in class and then take it to the next level with the art chapter. And that next level looks like the 3 murals that are in Donald, the first city flag ever for the city of Hubbard. That's amazing. Yes, our students did that. And then it can we even did things like with working with PTO and the Kindness Week stickers. So it's a broad spectrum of things that we've done. I do really appreciate how the students that I do get to engage with in the art classes. I think one of the things that really is important to me is that they do actually have a voice and they learn how to communicate. Because in theory, art is communication, and being able to articulate and understand that not everybody has the same opinion. But to be able to articulate your opinion and to justify the choices that you've made. So I'm super excited. But yeah, we've done a lot over the past 24 years. So I am curious what this year will look like.
Well, I
Yeah.
can say in my short time, there's been a few times where I've asked Sarah to, hey, there was the project that got started last summer. We had a few other things last year and I just appreciate Sarah's always willing to say, yes, we can do that. And
Yes.
so that's kind of just who I've gotten to know you as. And it looks like there might be some people here to maybe honor.
I have a fan following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to come up and give her those and
Yeah. These are actually graduates. Love it. So,
and I'll turn it over to the board.
Well, I just want to say, I have been able to witness some of your projects with the city of Hubbard and how wonderful it is and amazing it is. And it's great that you have the ability to teach the students to collaborate with government entities to have that drawing. And I know that one particular person is kind of opinionated and will ask for different things on it. And so, and you're able to make those adjustments to serve the whole project. And so I have really appreciated seeing all the artwork. Does anybody else?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Just reiterate
Yeah.
congratulations too,
Thank you.
that's very, very cool, so.
Yeah,
I'll just say that I've always enjoyed talking with Sarah on the phone. I have my little business at Go Get Meats, and she would send students out to get advertising for the yearbook, and they didn't always know the answer, but I would call Sarah and just enjoyed that relationship over the phone. Really, I didn't meet her till we walked through, I don't know, last year or the year
Right.
before, and got to see her classroom and all of that. Anyway, enjoyed it.
yeah, thank you. No, it's cool. It's amazing the conversations I've had over the years. I have one particular student that called me and came over and had a conversation his junior year of college, because he really needed to battle through the idea of, do I finish school or do I play with Durango de Montes? And I was like, how often is a globally recognized band
Yeah.
going to ask you to play with them?
Right.
And when could you go back to school? You know what I'm saying? But my point in that is the connections that I've made with those students, like here he is a junior in college, still coming back to say, hey, can I talk and get some real feedback? So, that's really important to me. So anyway,
Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
your advisory
thank you.
award.
Thank you. If you guys want to come down to Eugene, 12:30 on Saturday, we are doing the formal presentation of the awards. So yeah, I'm one of 7 art teachers for the state of
Yeah.
Oregon that's receiving any kind of award for NHS. So
Awesome.
yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm gonna go be mom because my son has a court of honor tonight.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go be mom now, but
Okay.
yes, yes, thank you.
Good.
Thank
Thank
you. Okay, high school ASB. Our pizza tonight.
Diane, do you
What?
know,
I'm sorry.
high school ASB?
I thought they were coming.
Okay,
I let Nathan know.
okay.
All right, we'll
In
see if
fact,
they
I thought
show.
one of them was sitting there.
Okay.
Wait.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. We'll skip back if we need to.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna acknowledge our extended overnight field trip for the Key Club. At the district convention, Portland, Oregon, March 6th through the 8th. And then we have the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion if you've had a chance to overlook it? Look it over?
I make a motion, we approve it as presented.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Business and budget, we'll turn it over to business manager.
Perfect. Well, thank you all. Gonna just take a few minutes to walk through a couple of pieces tonight. And we'll have a couple slides to support that. Reports were posted yesterday. I do apologize as it was later than my goal. However, we've been working through some workload issues, and so those financial reports are up there. There's a couple things I wanted to be able to walk through tonight. First thing is gonna be, we received some updates on integrated plan, which is 4 different grants, and I'm gonna share some information on that. Gonna real quick talk about state school fund revenue and a transportation grant, and then provide you the enrollment update. So first of all, the integrated plan is a braiding of 4 grants from the state of Oregon: the early literacy, the early intervention and indicator systems grant, high school success, which we call HSS, and then SIA student investment account. And we always receive allocations. They let us know they're preliminary, but they're usually, historically, you see a little bit of movement in there. Unfortunately, the movement was not little this year, and we have been notified that our allocations have been updated as shown for 25-26, resulting in a $121,000 reduction from what was originally advised. Unfortunately, the allocations for next year are also at this point projected to be lower than those original allocations. I share this, one piece that I realized as I was walking in here tonight, I should have added to this slide. While this is a reduction in what we had been advised we would be receiving, those original allocations were received after you and our budget committee had approved a budget last year. So fortunately, the approved budget hit is closer to $78,000. Very fortunately, the high school success allocation, the current allocation is right on with what was budgeted, literally only off by $144. But the SIA allocation is about 75,000 lower than was budgeted. So kind of talking a bunch of different pieces, but the reason I wanted to share that tonight is, as you may have seen in the financial report, there is a potential that we may have some budget lines where expenditures could exceed what was originally budgeted. And the reasoning on that is that with these reductions in these grants and these grants covering primarily staff, those costs that may no longer fit within those grants will need to be absorbed by the general fund, or we will need to potentially identify other areas that adjustments can be made. We are really looking at that. We want to minimize the impact on program students, that sort of thing. But at this time, you know, we are moving figures around. I believe that we can continue to look at our expenditures and possibly find ways to stay within those budgeted allocations. However, right now, just needing to report that, you know, that our budget was spot on until, you know, until we had an unexpected revenue hit here. So these reductions come primarily, the SIA reduction comes primarily from state revenue reductions. The corporate activity tax, you may hear about the CAT tax. That is the primary source of the student investment account. And as we've kind of all been hearing, there are some concerns in the you know, economy. And so with those reductions, proposed or potential reductions in those collections, there's some concerns. So just wanted to put that on the radar. We are again reviewing every option to address these shortfalls and find ways to do that. If, as the year continues on, if it appears that we possibly will have expenditures in excess of what was budgeted, we will have to come back to the board with a supplemental budget and identify how that shortfall could be handled.
What percent does it have to be off to do that?
We cannot go over and what are called appropriations. So on the financial reports in the expenditure section, there's a section that talks about expenditures by function.
Sure.
Instruction, support services, community services. Those limits at the function level, those are appropriation limits, and we must stay within those limits with or come back to you. So we definitely will be monitoring those because you must, of course, have a supplemental budget approved prior to exceeding those expenditures. Clearly, we're not there at this point, but should we not be able to find some other adjustments, you know, we could have some concerns. There's a lot of massaging right now of the different funding sources, and I'm hopeful that we can find solutions within our current budgeted expenditures. So if we go on though, the other piece I want to point out tonight is on the positive side. The revenue section of the financial report is showing a very positive variance projected for our state school fund revenues. In fact, almost $400,000 more than we budgeted. However, I urge us to proceed with caution. The primary driver of this, on our next slide, the primary driver of this is due to what's called the transportation grant, and that is part of our state school fund revenue. For a transportation grant, every district across the state is ranked on the amount they spend on what are known as reimbursable transportation costs. So those are gonna be your home to school trips, your between educational facilities, educational field trips. It is not going to include athletics. It is not going to include field trips that do not have an educational nature. On the next slide, what happens after that ranking occurs, then the state of Oregon comes through with the transportation grant, and the districts that are ranked between 90 and 99, and in a sense that's a percentile, they get a 90% reimbursement of everything they spend on reimbursable transportation. The next band gets an 80% reimbursement, and the next band gets a 70%. North Marion School District has always been at 70%. On the next slide, we found out this year we bumped up right onto the cliff. We are the second number 80, and meaning we're the second, there's 197 school districts in the state. They rank them, essentially, there's 2 ranks for every numerical value, 1 to 99. We are literally on the cliff. But because that's where we are right now, the state is funding us as if they're going to give us back 80% of everything we spend on transportation this next year. On the next slide, I wanted to show you an example of this and these are available on ODE's website. These are what they call estimates, but this is what makes up our payment every month we get when we get our state school fund. And on the right-hand side there, you can see that we have projected, and this is a number that North Marion has provided to ODE, just like every other district has provided their estimated costs for 25-26. We believe we're gonna be about 2.675 million for transportation. So they're giving us a payment based on 80% reimbursement of that. On the next slide though, if we bump just one spot down, instead of giving us 2.14 million, we really would only be getting 1.872 million, a difference of 267,500, 10% of what we spend. The difficult piece with this is while we are receiving the money right now at an 80% reimbursement rate, the next slide explains the timeline that we are faced with. So in January of 2025, every school district submits what's called an estimate of membership and revenue. And you're providing figures, and one of those figures is what do you think you're going to spend on transportation in the coming school year? So July through February of this school year, we are going to be paid using that estimate. And right now, based on our estimate, we are at 80%. In January of 2026, in just a few months, we're going to submit an updated estimate of membership and revenue, updating our transportation anticipated costs for this school year, as well as our 26-27 estimates. And they're going to adjust our payments for the last 3 payments of this school year. The tricky part is that in September of 2026, almost a year from now, we'll submit transportation reports. In December of 2026, over a year from now, we'll submit our audit from this year's financials. And in May of 2027, we will find out if we get 80% or 70%.
Oh my gosh.
So while I tried to make this as we,
Yeah. Wow.
so we essentially are receiving money at the 80%. That's fabulous, right? We may have to pay back that 10% if we slip $1 below the second number 80. So right now, you're seeing revenue much higher than budgeted because we didn't budget for 80% reimbursement. So the nice part is right now revenue projections, I've got on there that I'm expecting us to be about $390,000 above what we budgeted for state school fund. Even if 275 of that is potentially needs to be set aside for the just in case, we are still looking to be positive on our state school fund revenue right now. But we're going to hear this over and over this year that our revenues should be higher than budgeted due to this one little bump. And fortunately, this is on the radar, because if it wasn't on the radar, schools unfortunately have been caught very off guard. You have schools that have been at 90% or 80% all along, and then they drop. You've got a very significant budget,
Yeah,
hit.
10%.
So stay tuned, more to come on that.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what causes a drop?
So
A little more detail on it.
exactly, so our ranking right now is based on every district sending in their estimate. Here's what we think we're gonna spend on transportation for the 25-26 school year. When it's all said and done, the ranking is based on our audit. So if somebody underestimated, they may be down here, maybe they're down in the 70%. But when it actually comes out in the end, you know, they move ahead. So until every school district's audit is turned in, well over a year from now, no one knows where they really land.
What keeps school districts' transportation numbers in line, knowing that?
So that's an interesting, it's a very interesting question because, you know, it's a gamble of, boy, if I spent another $1,000, I would have got another 10% reimbursement. So you don't.
It's a slippery slope, obviously.
It is
I just wondered like what
extremely
details are involved there, because it seems to be an interesting process for 10% gain on.
Yep, fortunately, your audit, of course, the audit process is to validate, you know, the accuracy of your information. I can tell you just over the past few weeks, one of the pieces that the auditors are looking at is, you know, what is your contract for your transportation rate increases say versus what are your books saying? So there is a independent, if you will, vetting, but you're absolutely right that a district who has maybe a significant rate increase 1 year, it may bump you up into that 80% reimbursement rate, but then the next year, if you're back down to a more cost of living, 3%, 4% adjustment, you might be back down. So this is not while it'd be great to get the higher reimbursement, being on these cliffs is very, very difficult. And my suggestion to the board is that we proceed with caution until we know whether that revenue is truly ours to keep.
Yeah.
Great. All right, final enrollment report update. So pleased to share this. I wouldn't typically provide weekly updates, but I did it just this one time because I wanted you guys to see the swing week to week in our enrollments. So we started the year 1583 was the number I shared with you at the last board meeting. I am thrilled after the 10-day drop that I explained, we are still at 1581. I actually did a run as of Friday and we're still right there. So very, very happy. That is our official October 1 enrollment date. That is a big measurement date statewide. That can be excellent news. I can say that is in excess of what we submitted in our estimate of membership and revenue, that EMR that was submitting our transportation numbers. We submit our student numbers, we submit our property tax collection estimates. We submit a lot of that. So right now, that's a positive for us. I will state though that the state did just what they call rebalance the state school fund, because a lot of districts are reporting not as significant of a loss as that had been seen, a little bit of a slowing of the line, right? We know there's a downward trend in enrollment, but there seems to be a little bit of a slowing of that trend, so in a way, while it might be great that maybe our decrease is slowing, a lot of other districts are too, so then the pot, of course, of state school fund dollars gets spread, but we'll just continue to monitor and just thrilled to see families choosing to be here and stay here, and we're doing everything we can to make this a place everybody wants to be, so. I believe that is it tonight, and if there's any questions, happy to answer.
Like,
I asked during the presentation, myself, thank you.
Are the transportation charges based per student transported?
So our contract has some unique pieces. We have charges that are per. So it depends on the type of route. So if it's a general education route, it we have one certain rate. If it's a special education route, we have a different type of rate. If it's more than a certain number of hours a day, there's an extra hourly charges put on it. If it's field trips, different rates, size of the bus determines the rate. So there are a lot of complexities to how a route is charged. It is an incredibly intense spreadsheet, that comes through and we vet it and ask questions, right? Because that's, of course, you know, we're all human, but, there's, you know, minimum mileage per day, there's excess miles, there's excess hours, there's large bus, small bus, the 90 passenger versus the 70 passenger versus special education buses versus. Yeah, it's a great, we have that information at the office. If you were ever interested in looking at that, we'd be
Yeah,
happy
it
to,
sounds like it's not really based on students, number of students,
not at all.
it's the miles driven and the size of the.
How often do you renegotiate that?
Cost of operating.
So this current contract is from 23. I think we have one more year in the current.
And what's the rate increase each year on that, do you know, offhand?
I do, it varies every year.
It's all right, that's all right, I just wanted to.
Yes, it has varied year to year, and to avoid misspeaking, I don't want to quote it without pulling it up in front of me, but it does vary wildly, right? Yeah.
Two things, given that we won't know until very late in the cycle, is it basically just gonna be an EFB padding?
Correct, what my anticipation is that when we get to the end of the year and we say, okay, transportation costs, we estimate 2.675, they came in at 2.69 or whatever.
Yeah.
We have $269,000 in our ending fund balance.
Yeah, okay.
That while it won't be differentiated on the books, we all need to know it's earmarked as potentially a check back to ODE. Right? Now, if May comes next year, then that is a great, you know, piece to be
May of
able
twenty
to.
twenty-seven.
I'm sorry, yes, in May of 2027, when the final comes out, it's incredible.
And then our
Yeah,
monthly just to add to that, is our labor management meeting with UNME yesterday, or last week, we told them about that, because we know as we go into bargaining, they look at that, you know, you're sitting on this amount of money kind of thing, and we just said
But
that,
if you
yeah,
don't know
we're
if
not
you're
gonna be
gonna
able
get
to
it or
earmark
not.
it, but there's $267,000 that we are not going to be able to spend until May of 2027.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
They appreciated that heads up. So
Yeah, I was
sorry,
gonna say, and it's good that it's gonna be on the front side of that, so. The other question was on the attendance, it looks like K1 and 2 is beginning to stabilize. We're not getting the. The marked drops, in fact. Was it 1 looked like the lowest really average and then?
right now, second grade is kind of our lowest class at
water point.
89, but you know, we've got 92 in kinder, 93 in first, 89 in second, so
That's,
honestly,
so we may have reached our low water point then. I mean, that's hard to
Potentially, and I
say,
think
but.
the other thing to think about though, with our primary school principal, in here is that, you know, we've got. The second grade classroom is the one grade level where we're down a
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so and they're already at the kind of that,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that point of, you know, don't put any more in. And so now we've got classes that are about 3 students more, so we're gonna have to wrestle with that, you know, in the
Rebalancing that
spring,
out.
rebalancing and figuring that out, so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have, so.
Jenny?
No questions. I appreciate your, keen eye looking at this and keeping track of everything for us. Elsie?
No questions. Thank you for the thorough explanation. That really helped.
You're doing a phenomenal job. I just want to go on the record and say that. Thank you.
yes. Appreciate the feedback and welcome any feedback, more or less, whatever you guys are looking for. Appreciate it.
Never bored, that's for sure. Okay, board action. So. We have a couple action items here. We'll just go through them one at a time. So we have if you see it in front of you. The 2025-2026 board operating agreement. We talked about this at the work session. I didn't know if you had any questions, they should have been given to Dan prior. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt that operating agreement for 25-26.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. And then the next one is the OSBA policies. We pulled out 3 of them that we had comments on and changes on, but I'll let Superintendent Bush speak to IIA.
Yeah, so IIA did not get pulled out, and if you remember, that's the instructional materials policy, and there was some discussion about, questions about notification to parents on, required materials that some families may find some objections to, or maybe content that might be that, questions around notice to parents. And so, just to update you on that, there's no changes to the policy, but we did meet with UNME last week to share those concerns and saying that we want to collaborate with teachers to develop some practices as to, under what circumstances or how should we be notifying parents if you're using required readings that some families may find objectionable. And so we met with UNME last week, we met with our middle and high school principals this morning to, how do we want to get this conversation started? So Des and the principals are going to be meeting with a group of teachers, and developing some practices and policies that we can bring back to the board to insert into policy, after we get some, input from the teachers on this. So, as I talked to board leadership about this, my recommendation is to adopt the policy as it's written, because it is tied to some previous legislation. With me coming back to the board with updates on how we're doing and developing that, and then bring some policy revisions, hopefully before the end of by December.
Okay. All right, so, Diane, how do you want us to read this one out? OSBA policies from the August 2025 folder? Cause I don't see them all listed.
Correct, well, if you clicked on that link, it'll list them as you.
I
Uh,
mean, it's. Here's.
Is it
the summary.
The summary, okay.
So what you could do, I apologize, all my highlights and stuff, those are notes to me, but. What you could do is, make a motion to approve the August summer quarterlies as presented. With the exception of the BHG, IKF and those, and then we'll do those one at a time, right?
Right,
Dan, is that what you want?
Yeah.
does that work?
Does that make sense?
Okay, does anybody wanna make that motion?
Sure, I can make a motion that we, this would be second reading and adoption, is that
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, so second reading and adoption, the list that was provided to us, with, the exception of removing BHD, IKF, and JFCEB.
And do I hear a second?
1 second.
Karina, first and a second, I'll just repeat this back so it's clear. We're doing a second reading and adoption of the OSBA policies, August 2025, that were given to us in the list, with the exception of BHD, IKF, and JFCEB. Okay, any discussion?
Well, I'll just say that I'm not in agreement with the wording. It's in the statute, so I don't know that there's anything that we can, as this board, do about it, but I just want to say that, I don't like the ideology that's written into statute and policy. The endorsement of, or the inability to eliminate any material if it has a perspective or story or study of any of these 15 protected classes just gives me some pause, but I have some confidence in our staff and in our people to work with that in a reasonable way that fits with our community, but I just would say that for the record.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
So for these other three, I will at least address the changes to make sure for the purposes of the second reading, we understood what they were. So that on BHD, we struck out any of the language related to the stipends. But added the language that the superintendent will establish and communicate procedures regarding submission for expenses for reimbursement, because that was the change that was entered into that policy. So that was based on your feedback.
Yeah, is the top title also supposed to have stipends? Did we want stipends left in that top title or out of the title or? I wasn't sure. Since we struck out the stipends, I don't
That's a
know if we
great
have
point.
to.
Yeah, I think we need to take it out if it's being struck out of the bottom.
So, yeah, good catch, because I didn't catch that. So I think we can change this policy to be back to probably board member and board member reimbursements.
Okay,
And we want individual motions on,
yes, we want individual motions on these.
okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt BHD after amending the title of this policy.
And do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm kind of slow.
That's okay.
No problem, Merle.
The wheels just turned. Oh, I wanted to clarify, are we keeping in the language that allows reimbursable expenses?
Mhm.
With superintendent approval.
Right.
Well,
Well, I don't
superintendent
know.
process.
Process, I'm sorry.
I just need to develop a process for you to go about that.
And are we taking out the stipend?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and revote, just so we're clear. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, the next policy, IKF graduation requirements. Merle had suggested that we include the language related to the definition of looking for it here. Is related to enrollment,
Full-time attendance.
full-time attendance. And so our definition for full-time attendance is regular full-time attendance means not being absent for more than 10% of school days that the student is enrolled in a school year. It gives an OAR reference for definition of chronic absenteeism. But then it says, excused absences will not be counted against the student. So we have a definition.
Great. Excellent. All right. I would entertain a motion. For this policy.
Make a motion that we approve IKF.
Can we addend that to the adoption? That we adopt, IKF.
Oh, sorry, yes, that we adopt IKF.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. So again, we're voting on adopting IKF. Any discussion?
That's the bracketed one on the footnote on page 7.
Correct.
Right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
And so the last one we pulled out so that if the board wanted to have a discussion and also to ease the motion process. So there's been no changes to this one. It's a second reading. So if there wants to be an individual discussion, an individual vote.
Excellent, thank you for respecting that. Do I hear a motion for JFCEB? I'll make a motion that we adopt JFCEB, personal electronic devices and social media as presented. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion?
I have a discussion point.
Yes, go ahead, Glenn.
I have a statement prepared, so. bear with me.
Excellent, thank you.
I continue to strongly offer my stringent opposition to the adoption of policy JFCEB, also known as personal electronic devices and social media policy. As a 9-year veteran of the North Marion School District Board of Directors, it is my opinion this policy and the executive order that directs it remains deeply flawed. I am further of the opinion that adoption of this policy will put the board and district at risk of serious litigation in the long term. Adoption in its current form will box the board into an untenable position of either being able to uphold this policy or execute our oaths of office simultaneously. I apologize if my verbal arguments in opposition were not clear at the work session. I will try to be more succinct. I would begin by saying that I am opposed to limiting cell phones or personal communication devices during class time. I'm not opposed to that. I very much believe limiting devices used during class time does foster a much improved classroom environment, which is conducive to the best conditions for learning. This policy, however, does not limit its scope to classroom time, unfortunately. And that is where my reservations begin. Limiting what students do during their lunch and to a lesser extent their passing times causes me great discomfort from a policy standpoint. In my opinion, for some of our students, this very much borders on limiting free speech rights, those specifically laid out in the First Amendment. For those students who have turned 18 and are still enrolled, these rights are guaranteed, not maybe, not kind of, not grayish area, and I don't believe this body has any business or standing in limiting them. To the contrary, I believe the oath of office each of us took when we assumed these roles as directors means governance of the district must be guided by adherence to the U.S. Constitution and the Constitution of the the Constitution of the State of Oregon in adopting policy, both of which guarantee very robust and wide view of what freedom of expression and speech encompasses. I believe if even a modicum of wiggle room would have been acknowledged in the executive order, given the unique nature of North Marion to other districts across the state. North Marion has a closed campus. It exists in a rural area. Our students do not have the option to go off campus as part of their normal instruction day. This policy, as written, makes no accommodation for our students needing to stay on campus all day long. This immediately sets up a situation where many neighboring districts who do have open campus during lunchtimes will not have their rights limited. But because our student body attends North Marion, they stand to lose rights. I would ask, in this current climate of equity exuberance, how does penalizing our own students fulfill that obvious goal? You might ask what rights I'm referring to, specifically elements of the First Amendment to the Constitution, including freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, and unencumbered access to free press. There are also certainly situations where freedom of religion could be cited from this proposed policy as usurping rights. This policy, on top of limiting rights, which I believe the district has no business in doing, also fundamentally alters the relationship between students and parents, which has been the norm for over 20 years. This policy puts obvious limits on the communication that can and should exist between a student and a parent. Is this the kind of policy we want to be promoting? When there is a sickness, an accident, or death in the family, do we want our kids finding out from somebody else? Say maybe somebody who has an exemption, that grandma or grandpa is in the hospital or worse. In heightened security situations, do we really want students to not have the ability to contact their parents directly? In times of national emergency, natural disaster, is it really best use of policy to limit the interaction between our students and their families? Additionally, we have incredible families of enormous variety, cultures, and socioeconomic backgrounds. This means that we have students who contribute financially to the well-being of their family. Limiting students' ability to communicate with a job that helps the family have financial stability also makes no sense. Offering exemptions as prescribed by the policy, the proposed policy, reeks of haves and have-nots with regard to rights, which should inherently be guaranteed, not doled out. Not to mention the obvious implications of navigating HIPAA laws as they relate to very specific privacy, which in no way can be guaranteed under this proposal. Because this board also acts in a quasi-judicial role, we can also expect to have the final arbiter of this deeply flawed policy. This policy, as presented, designates the board as the maker of the policy, empowers us as board members to direct our superintendent to execute. But then also creates a situation where we act as judge and jury overseeing the final implementation. Just so I get this right, we as a district take away some students' rights, then we set up a system to punish these same students. And then we, if they try to exercise those rights, and then we as a board are compelled to rule against our students on a policy that is clearly at odds with rights they are guaranteed. Damn, it sounds as though we are winning the lottery thrice. I would also remind this board that as a body, we have had to right wrongs with regard to free speech in favor of students and against staff where free speech rights were violated. This board has had to remove the district noses from places it absolutely did not belong or face the very real possibility of litigation. Lastly, I will say that I've had it said to me, this isn't a fight worth making. This is not a hill to die on. Because there is not more opposition, we should just let it happen. The ease at which rights are disregarded in this executive order to me is breathtaking. And if now is not the time to adhere to my oath of office, then when would be?
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn.
Do we have any other discussion?
I appreciate your taking time, thought to work through that. I was trying to think today, and that's not very much time to try to think through what all is constituted by free speech. There are times when you're not allowed to speak as free speech. Not many, but there are. And there are some things you bring up that I think are possibilities. I'm wondering if we could withdraw this policy from or continue it on its present status, first reading, not second and adoption, so we can debate and discuss it further among ourselves. Because I think you have some a valid point that could we adjust it to allow for lunchtime use? Does that get so cumbersome that we defeat the purpose of the policy altogether?
I would
We
say,
are agreeing that there is an academic detriment to having the cell phones at use in the classrooms, but my initial thought was students that are mature enough and responsible enough to leave them alone could carry them into the classroom, but that puts and I'm still somewhat of that inclination that until they show that they can't do that. And I too disagree with the executive order, knowing that the legislature who makes the laws and sets for the state of Oregon, considered this matter and said, we aren't going to act on it yet. We don't feel like we're ready to do that. And some said it's an overreach to do what you've done, Governor. And yet it went ahead as an executive order, and I'm not convinced that was the right way to move ahead with it. And
so
it does say Valley Bell. I'll just leave it with that, just some thoughts.
right now there's a first and a second on the table to approve the policy. And I will add, even though I hear what Glenn is saying, and I agree with the majority of it. The policy is directly tied, like we knew before, where a threat of funding could be taken, as you and I both saw in masking. So we will go to a vote. Blake,
Yes.
we'll vote for I first. Sorry,
Aye.
Diane. Aye. Merle,
Nay.
Glenn,
Nay.
Jenny,
I agree with Glenn. I don't think we have any business really putting this in policy, but it is tied to funding. It is an executive order and I will vote yay.
Kelsey,
Man, What happens if? What happens if it doesn't, if we don't adopt it,
Then we'll be out of compliance with the ORS.
because it has to be adopted by the 31st?
Correct.
I. I agree with a lot of what Glenn said. I also. Believe that there's an issue in the schools with the cell phones and. I'm going to vote yay to adopt it.
Yay, motion carries. JFCEB is adopted, and I will say, thank you, Glenn, for reading that. That's duly noted. Okay, moving on to C.
So I sent the board an email, kind of outlining, why this is on the agenda, and so. Essentially, if somebody wants to be on the budget committee for the Willamette Educational Service District. They need to be nominated by the school board in which they reside, and so. Adelita Ruiz, has requested, is seeking to be on the WESD budget committee, and so this motion is there before you.
All right, do I hear a motion? If you've had time to read the bio.
Make a motion that we nominate Ms. Ruiz as a candidate for the WESD budget committee.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Do you need us to read the different motion down at the bottom? I so moved, does it, or is
No.
what we did good enough? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I apologize, I forgot discussion. Please call me out on that. Point of order on myself. Okay. District operations.
All right, so we have several operation reports today, so we're gonna start with Desiree and the Division 22 standards and assurances of compliance.
Dan, could I ask before we do that real quick? Being new, not understanding the first reading, second reading, could it be explained to me the process and why we go through that and what that looks like, just so I can understand it better?
Yeah, so in board policy that, and I was gonna have a conversation with board leadership about that. Again, I don't have the policy, but I'll send it out in my next weekly update.
If it's for another conversation, that's great.
Yeah,
We can-
the
Just
purpose,
last meeting made me think about it.
yeah, so the purpose of,
Actually, I'm gonna call a point of order.
okay,
We'll have this discussion offline and he'll do it to the weekly. Is that okay?
Oh, I'm great with whatever.
Okay,
It was
perfect.
purely
Let's
just
stick to the agenda.
last week at
thank you. Okay. Yeah.
No, he just sent it to me and I totally forgot to have the conversation
Yeah,
to
cool.
pass it along, but thank you.
No problem.
Hello, so this is our annual Division 22 report, and so we're gonna bring you up fast. It's next one, Cheryl. So Division 22, especially for some of you guys that are new to the board, is all of our, is it working? Yeah, that's weird. There you go. Yeah, click on it. There we go. So,
That's okay, you're good.
the configuration. So basically, all the laws that govern schools are fit in Division 22. So the chapter, the division, the rule, the title, Division 22 are when the law has that 022 on it. And it's all the standards that the legislatures have passed that school boards and our school districts must meet to say that we're at a minimal compliance with the rules of the state. So this year, they took all the same rules and put them in different categories for some reason. I think it's part of the new shift on accountability that the state is having. They're trying to reorganize things so it's easier to do. They didn't change the law specifically, though. There's still about 60 laws that we have to report on every year. And really, this report is about us signaling to the communities that we are working to make sure that we are in compliance with the standards. It's really a floor of what we have to meet, not the ceiling. We can go above and beyond a lot of this work, but we are working to make sure that we are hitting those requirements and meeting our obligations to the state of Oregon. So we're always a year behind, so basically we say, according to last year, how did we do? So this is the 2024-2025 compliance report. And just some updates that were in the Division 22s for last year, so new laws. Or updates to certain laws. So as we've said the last few years, we are waiving the essential skills requirements. So that's coming from the state level. We still aren't reporting on that. There is going to be probably in the future some kindergarten readiness assessments that will be given. And last year there was reporting that happened. There were certain communities that were piloting different things, and so eventually that will get put into place when we'll have to report on it, and the law is passed, but we do not have to report on it yet. And then we had our equity committee that was needed to be formed and it had to be ready by this year, which we were working on all of last year. So those were some of the new ones. Also, we needed to put into place a planned kind of approach to social emotional learning and the adoption of the personal finance rule classes and the higher education career path skills, either classes or how we're incorporating those standards into different courses at the high school. There was also some changes around modified extended diploma and certificate attendance. Mostly that we are reporting options for diplomas to especially our students experiencing disabilities. And then there was a refocus on substance use and prevention intervention plans that went into place last year. And it's about how we educate our students about opioid addiction and to be proactive around that. So and for last year, the other thing that happens within Division 22 is if there was anything that we were out of compliance for the year before, then we also have to spend time last year getting those problems fixed. So last year, we did not have any corrective actions. We were in compliance, and so we didn't have any plans that we had to put into place last year for the 23-24 school year. This year, however, it came to our realization that we were out of compliance with the substance use and prevention intervention plan. I will say that we are not the only ones, and I know this because the state sent out an email that essentially said, no, this has been a rule all last year. We're sorry that you guys didn't realize it. Everyone needs to be on board. Here's what you have to do. And so we aren't the only ones that are out of compliance from last year. So we will be working to get that plan written. Wes and Cheryl are working on it already. It will require us that we have a comprehensive plan for substance use and prevention and intervention developed. There are some K-12 education elements that are part of the health standards, so we're already meeting those. And then there is a course that ODE is developing around opioid prevention that has to be given in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, and then once in high school. And so we'll be working with our health teachers at the middle school and the high school to incorporate those into the health lessons. And it's basically like a lesson plan that they will teach that ODE provides. So we are gonna be working on that. I'm working with the high school and middle school principals to address the required lessons, and we'll be in compliance for this year by late fall. And so at this point, we're presenting it to you. We will put all of this on the web in both English and Spanish, letting our community know that we are in compliance except for that one law and what our corrective action is going to be. And then for next year, we're anticipating there'll be additional changes because we know that the legislator is really looking at how do we report out and make sure that we are being held accountable for different things. And so Division 22 is one of the primary ways they do that.
And I think that, oh, and these are just some resources if you need them, including where to find the different resources and the database of all the laws that we have to follow. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Any quick questions? Earl?
Well, Desiree covers a lot of territory and makes for a lot of questions. Do you have any clue what the redesigned diplomas will look like?
No, the diplomas weren't redesigned. The policy actually that you guys adopted shows what the diploma requirements are. The only piece of that law that changed is how we report to families, what the different options are for extended versus modified versus certificate of attendance.
When I looked, it's related to that policy that we looked at, the IF, whatever one it is, and my note to myself afterwards, this is confusing. And I don't understand it, and I wish someone would explain to me this certificate of attendance and modified and et cetera, different diplomas, all these possibilities that there are, and how the different ones are earned and why, but maybe that's a subject for another time.
Yeah, we could absolutely, a
Yeah.
future board
Put
meeting.
that on a future agenda.
Yep.
That's a good question.
Absolutely. And I will say the state has been looking at in general about diploma requirements for a while now. It's part of the reason why essential skills keeps getting waived, because that used to be a diploma requirement, and that's why it's in Division 22, and now as they're redesigning. So in the future, it might come back up. Usually when we see a redesign, it's around credits, right? How many English credits do they have to earn versus math credits, et cetera. They're usually nothing super substantial. The other piece that was part of the, I guess, I misspoke. The other part of the diploma thing that was redesigned is that they are requiring to graduate, that they do that financial literacy type class, and the career pathways class.
I saw it.
So, but they didn't change the number of credits. They just basically took some of the elective credits that already existed within it and were required and reallocated those for those 2 half credits.
And I noticed the state of Oregon requires 24 and North Marion 25.
Yeah.
Is that right? So
Yes.
we're up a little bit, and I do appreciate the information as to how to find things and read these. I won't promise I'll read 60 rules, but
No, that's my job. That's what I hear.
If I was a bed member, I bet you can.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the rules are written in such a way where you go through and you realize that it's an entire law that's 4 pages long that is for them to say, like, you have to have a policy that guarantees this. And it's like, great, here's the policy. Like, that's all it is. So it's really interesting actually, reading through it. When I got this job, that was the first thing I did, was learn about Division 22, and that was reading all 60 laws.
Mr. Lincoln that wrote once about a gentleman he knew, and he said, that man can compress the most words into the smallest ideas of any man I ever met.
Thank you so much, Des.
Yes. I think, can you exit out? Then I'm pretty sure I'm next. Oh, you're next?
Yep.
Okay, great.
We might have reordered this, so you didn't have to play musical chairs.
That's right, that's better, actually.
Yeah, because then
They're getting their
all
steps
set up.
in.
Yeah.
I would just go through it and plug through it and all the things, so it's better if she just does it this way. All right, the quickest, easiest report, there is a trend happening for the last 4 years. So this is, again, we're reporting for 24-25. So last school year, how many incidences of restraint or seclusion that we did in the district, and it continues to be 0. So we took a lot of efforts to use all of our other strategies. Besides restraint. So, any questions?
People good? All right, moving on. Thank you.
See, it actually worked
Yeah,
out
that was
better.
actually, yeah, that was well played. Well played.
So ironically, Cheryl's report is one of our Division 22s that we have to track restraints and seclusion, then we have to report out every year. So those are the kind of things that are in Division 22. This is also in Division 22, which is that every
year, ODE puts out a report on kind of the state of the union for our English language learners. And we share some of that information with you and give you some analysis of what the state is doing versus what North Marion is doing. So those are the main things that this report talks about: the demographic of our language learners, who is participating in the different programs, the academic achievement of our language learners, attendance, progress towards graduation and beyond, and how state revenue is used to support our language learners in our classrooms. So here is the demographic of ELs in Oregon. Right now, we are seeing a continued increase in the number of students who are identified as language learners. This year, we're at 11.5% overall. Of that percentage, 4.3% are students who are classified as former language learners. So if you remember, in Oregon, we have a category called Ever EL. So once you've been identified as a language learner, you have that kind of EL category tied to your ADM from that point forward. And then 3% of students are in what's called monitoring, which means they have exited out of our ELD program. And we then track their academic progress for the next 3 to 4 years to make sure that they are still continuing to grow. And then 81% of students in Oregon are English only speakers.
How do you qualify, or how do you, be an ELS speaker, what's that process like?
Sure, so when a student either comes to us as a kindergartner or moves into our district, the first thing we do is called the home language survey. Families fill that out and indicate a few basic questions. Do you speak Spanish, a foreign language other than English at home? What was the first language that your student was exposed to? And Cheryl, you were just looking at these with kindergartners. There's one more. It's like, what language do you speak as a family? What language is spoken to your student, and what was their first language, right? And so if one of those is anything other than English, then we do what is called the ELPA screener. So it's a language proficiency test. And if a student is identified as that of having low English abilities, then they are then classified as ELs, language learners, and we would put them in our ELD program, English Language Development Program, to get services.
Thank you.
And then we do an ELPA test every year, and once they get scores of 4 or above in reading, writing, speaking, and listening, then they exit out of the program.
But they keep that with them always.
Yeah, then they're ever ELs.
Thank you.
So again, for some trends, overall student enrollment of our ELs has increased. The number of ELs has increased, and recent arrivers, so students who have not been enrolled in a American school and were not born in the United States, has rise significantly. It's the highest number since 2018. In the state of Oregon, there's over 247 unique home languages that are spoken, and the majority of them are Spanish speaking, and the majority of our EL students are in K through 5. So in North Marion, it's split. We're about 50-50. All of our buildings have approximately the same number of students, with the high school being slightly less than everyone else. So within North Marion, approximately 387 students are considered language learners, 23%. English learners are approximately 41% of our student population. So 23 are currently in the ELD program, and then that 41 is at any point they were considered language learners. Again, just like within the state, while our overall student enrollment has decreased, the number of ELs have increased within our district. And the number of recent arrivals for North Marion has also increased. We have 11 unique home languages in North Marion, and the majority of our students are considered Latinx, and majority of them are K-5, but only marginally so. So this is our participation rate in our different targeted programs. Statewide, about 18.8% of our language learners are also identified as
experiencing disabilities. About 9.9% of our students in the state are considered migrant, and only 2% are at North Marion. And currently at the state, 0.5% of our students are identified as talented and gifted, whereas in North Marion, we have about 4% of our talented and gifted students are language learners and Latinx.
Of the 11 other languages or total languages spoken, what other, does North Marion offer any other services outside of Spanish for help?
For the students or for
For
families?
the students?
So the students, the language development classes they're in are not actually they're English based. And so it's available for any other language, including Spanish. Though most of our teachers who teach it, if they speak another language, it is Spanish. The majority of our other languages are dialects of Spanish. And so Spanish is still fairly useful, though we have a Mandarin speaker. We have some other Pacific Island, speakers. I think Hmong is one of them. And Russian is the majority of the
So
languages.
dialects in Spanish are so different than Spanish. Speaking Spanish, when people speak to me in a dialect, it's completely different.
Yeah, it is
Not,
very,
Anyways, that's what I just wondered. Thank you.
yeah, yep.
Why the disparity between our tech students and statewide is, are we better at identifying them? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, we're working really hard, yeah. In part because it was really interesting, I was sharing this conversation with Cheryl today. And I'll use it as an example. We have a student right now who is a language learner, and we're trying to determine if they should qualify for TAG. And we do several different tests to determine if they qualify for TAG. We're noticing that the tests that we're giving them in English, they're scoring pretty high and above their peers. But what we've heard from their parents is, when in their home language though, in their first language, they're rock stars. And so we were discussing, and it's actually Mandarin is the language, and we were discussing, could we find an academic test in Mandarin so we can test their academic abilities in Mandarin, to make sure, because we're seeing that they're really exceeding in English, but if their Mandarin's even higher, that would really tell us. And I contacted Portland Public because they have a high population of Mandarin speakers, and the Portland Chinese School, and said, what tests do you use to support your TAG students? And they're like, we don't do anything like that. And why would we? We're not servicing them in Mandarin. It's like, right, but their L1 is, we're trying to determine if their first language is a language of excellence and shows how smart they are. Because we know that like learning 2 languages simultaneously is amazing, right? And so, but I said to Cheryl, I was like, I feel really proud that neither of them had good answers for me. Like, it wasn't helpful. I don't have a test for this young lady, but it was great to know that we're thinking about that we're trying to find those pockets of excellence, no matter what language their home language is. So,
Yeah, kudos to you too.
thanks.
Would we ever use AI to like translate, or
Possibly, what's really
Good call out.
seems like we could really leverage that?
Possibly. So one of the things that's hard though is that, so the test we're looking to do is your reading ability.
Yeah.
And the problem is in these different languages, how people read is actually a very different process. That's especially true in Spanish is
Yeah.
a good example, and Chinese, like the way the characters, like how you read across the page. The set of skills is so different that what I know that from other tests we do, we actually have within our STAR assessment, a Spanish literacy test. But it is not a translation of the English test, it's its own test, because we
Yeah.
wanna see, do you have Spanish literacy skills, which are different than English literacy skills? And so I don't know enough about other languages to know if there is a truth to that, but I'd wanna make sure to eliminate that as a truth before using it as an assessment to determine if. But that's a good question though, in general.
Just be like, maybe not for official reporting, but let's try it out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And anything we can do to just like help. I think it's like there's a book called Recognizing Brilliance. It's like, how do we recognize brilliance? And we've been working really hard, in our program of like finding that. And often what's amazing is for Spanish speaking students or students who speak two languages, how it manifests is like, oh, I'm learning English at an accelerated rate, and I already know Spanish at a really accelerated rate. And that tag brain is just like crackling with all the knowledge they have, so. So in terms of the academic abilities within, or academic outcomes for our students within the state of Oregon, we see that our language proficiency decreases as students go through the school system. So another way to put that, and this is a discussion we've been having a lot with our administrative team, is if students are still receiving language development services by the time they hit middle school or high school, it is unlikely they will ever exit out of the program. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Part of it is that the test progressively gets harder every single year. And so if they hit kind of a plateau and they're really struggling to get over that plateau, we see that they become kind of like stuck. The other thing that is a real issue that we're really working to address at the middle school and high school is if a student gets stuck and they've been in ELD since elementary, they get frustrated. Because they are literally one class of their day, every day, is taking lessons that they feel like they've taken a lot. And so we'll actually see our scores start to go down with those students who prior at the elementary levels were maybe scoring 3s, some 4s in some areas, just not quite getting out. And then they hit middle school and suddenly we're seeing them score 1s and 2s again. And so really thinking about how do we serve those students so that we can keep the energy going and the motivation to exit out of ELD versus just kind of giving up and being like, I'm stuck here, why try it anymore? So that's something we're really working on. That long-term English language learners where they've been in the program for more than 5 years is 21% of all of the current learners. And approximately 23% of English language learners receive special education services. Okay, it's just like trying to see it. And then because of that, the likelihood, it takes on average 5 to 7 years to exit out of the ELD program. If they have, they're experiencing disabilities on top of that, that proficiency rate is even longer. And so that is, that long-term proficient, like long-term not getting out of the program at the secondary level is just a significant problem at the state and as well for us. In general, we kind of track the state, but have some slightly higher areas in some of those other pieces of Section 4. So overall at the state, regular attendance rates amongst our language learners are much lower. About 58% of our English language learners had regular attendance, whereas the average for our district, I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm not gonna make up a number. But it's lower than the average, but not significantly lower. Our statewide graduation rates, similar graduation rates, if kids exited out of the program, they had similar graduation rates to English only students, but if they were currently in the EL program, their graduation rates were significantly lower. Ours were kind of on par with our English only students, whether they were in the program or not, at about 76. And then 76%. And then in terms of our post-secondary opportunities, if they were currently enrolled in EL programs, they were lower than our English only students in terms of going off and going to college or seeking out other post-secondary opportunities. If they had graduated or exited the ELD program, they had similar rates as our English only students. And that's a place where we're working to gather data. I don't have a direct comparison data, but my gut is that it would be similar to what the state is experiencing. And then I will not read this, but this is the basic expenditure from the state in terms of per pupil funding for our language learners. And then if you'd like to read the report yourself, you can click there.
Thanks, Dusty.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, so, come on up, Lori.
So I thought I was gonna be the shortest, but I think Cheryl got me. I'll be second shortest, but
Go for it.
So Dan wanted to update, and I think you guys had requested at the end of last year, maybe getting some update on numbers. So I put together, of course, the memo and then, the worksheet. But, I just wanted to show that, we finished off really strong for our first year of CEP. And had great numbers. We served, almost 300,000 meals, so 294, 938 breakfast and lunch. About 47,000 more than the previous year.
Wow.
So, and that's with lower attendance, as well, or enrollment, I'm sorry, as well. So super excited about that, and we're already seeing just in the first, month and a half, a huge increase. Our high school is, I mean, they're flying out of there. There's so many kids that are eating, it's amazing. So I'm super happy about seeing the high school kids, especially over there. So for our summer, we finished, in the parks, we served 19,557 meals. And again, that was 3,600 more than the previous summer, and that was for the 2 sites. So you can see the numbers for that. And then we also provided meals on campus for summer school migrant program and Jumpstart. And those are noted there for a total of the 24,319 summer meals.
Great.
So, that is that. There is the worksheet that shows, total lunches, total breakfast from 23-24 being, in the paid, free reduced paid program, and then for the 24-25 CEP. This is our second year for the 4-year assigned contract right now. So I have that, and then I did include an email that I got that I was super excited about, and I don't know if anybody took the time to read it, but about their kindergartner. And I just think that is so neat. Sometimes I hear parents talk about like their kids would never even touch broccoli, and now they do, but to have the salad, and I just, when she sent that to me, I was like, wow, that is really cool. So I wanted to share that with you guys.
Thank you so much. Any questions? All right, thank you.
I just wanna say, I just appreciate how much ownership Lori takes over the program. She, from just like that great example, she definitely wants to make sure kids enjoy their lunch and works very hard to be responsive to that. She takes very good care of her employees. And she's always communicating with the office on anything that she thinks we ought to be informed of. Her level of ownership is awesome. And I'm not just saying that because she's a Dodger fan. But that is a plus. So, but I really appreciate how hard you work and
Thank you.
enjoy what we're working.
When do they revisit, the free, because we're free, correct?
Correct.
We're on the lunch grant.
How often does that get?
So we can resubmit every year.
Okay.
But right now we're already at the 90%, which is, we're at the max that we can even get to for us. We won't be at 100%, like,
Sure.
because there's no way we would make it there.
Sure.
So we have the 90%, so that's what they reimburse us at, is the 90%, and then we take the 10% at paid. However, last year, the state of Oregon reimbursed that additional 10%.
Yeah.
For all 4 quarters and gave us full funding at 100%. So it's a matter of how much money do they have left over that they are gonna be able to give to us. We did get a letter that it's not guaranteed, but they're still gonna, go through their numbers to see if they're still gonna be able to provide the additional 10%. So it can be done every year, like if we had a huge increase, and it's all based off of direct certifications.
Well, I know you were just dedicating staff to. When they weren't free, you were dedicating staff to collecting money and,
Correct.
trying to clear up balances and debts and so.
And now those staff are working to get everybody
Right.
fed.
It's an incredible job. I agree with Dan that you know, Lori, kudos to you, your team is incredible, the numbers of meals that team is putting out and having seen different operations, I'm very grateful to be his partner and yeah, very impressed by the work of all of our food service team is incredible.
I will, thank you. I will say that we do almost 200 kids in 7 minutes.
Wow.
And that's huge, like that's like, I'm like, come on, guys, you got, you know, like, let's go, we got it. And it's like, to me, that's the exciting stuff is because that gives the kids longer times to eat or to go have their recess
Yeah.
or whatever it is. So the fact that we can get, and if that's opening up, you know, 2 lines to get them out, or is it, you know, 2 lines and a side person to do it? We're doing it to adjust for that. I came from a district where there were kids the last 3 minutes of their service still waiting in lines to get their meals. And so I thought, I never want to see that, you know, and this was just, it's amazing to have that. And to be able to say I can get almost 200 kids in 7 minutes is
Wow.
pretty good.
So if the state of Oregon doesn't cover that, the school's on the hook for the 10%, is that accurate?
My department is, it's not
The
under
food service
the food service
fund.
fund
Yes.
is. So we have to generate our own, or we have to go talk to general funds, but we generate, our goal is to make sure we meet that and generate.
How do you generate that if you're not charging for the lunches?
So it's the 90% and then the 10%,
On the
and then
10% side is what I'm asking.
making sure that we're cutting costs and making, you know, our meals are efficient for
Got it.
pricing, supplies, staffing.
Wow, it's a lot.
Do you account for like Snack Shack, during like at the high school or anything like that, or?
So the snack shack is in the food service account, but it's under a different funding.
All expenditures and revenue from high school snack shack must be recorded in the general fund. They cannot touch the food service fund. That's a federally structured program. So she has a special coding. We have in our account codes, we have a special account code so that is completely separated. However, still fully and wonderfully run by Lori and managed. So, but yes, funding must be kept very separate.
Different buckets.
Yeah.
I thought last year you had mentioned like a 3-year free lunch for all.
So it's 4 years. So
Yeah.
last year was the first and now we have the 3 and we're on this one. So we have 2 after that.
Okay,
So it's 4 years, 4 years from our approval date.
okay, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Good.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'm not gonna make 2 minutes, but we're gonna try, so. So on the June 23rd board meeting, I gave a kind of preview of where we would be over the first several months of the school year. And that's kind of what I've gone back to kind of look to say, have I done what I said I was going to do? As we've rolled out this school year, so I'm just gonna go through a quick list. So one of the things we talked about was having a conversation around enrollment and transfer processes. And I've tabled that because based on kind of board feedback as far as transfer processes, I've kind of tabled that for the time being. We did have a discussion about transfer processes, but again, tabling that for now. I talked about the superintendent advisory work group. We had our first meeting. Our second meeting is going to be scheduled hopefully before the end of this month. And eventually I'd like to have that group report to the board at some point this school year. The board superintendent working agreement. Check that one off the list. We said we would do a high school strengths and opportunities report. We did that with Principal Stanley here in August. We said we'd do a school kickoff report. I had all the principals here in September. I did say that we'd have the principals report in the fall. I'm kind of tabling that and maybe bringing them back up in January. It's been a pretty busy fall. I know it's gonna continue to be busy, so probably bringing them back before the board in January. We talked about the strategic plan. We got your input. It's been a busy couple of weeks, but we are gearing up to get that work going. The North Marion Teacher Summit was Friday. It was a little different structure this year in terms of not having our teachers, have a menu of options and having the teachers teach the teachers. But I really, really think it was a great balance of some district-led initiatives. And then having the buildings go back and work with their teams on that. And the more the district, when I say the district, like us, the more that we can have that work live at the building level. That really, and having those principals be the instructional leaders within their buildings, the better outcomes we will see. So I really like the direction it took this year in having those building leaders executing the work at their building level. I told you that we were gonna have a conversation around our evaluation system and how that ties to contract renewal. That had originally been scheduled for the fall, but we did that in August when you renewed everybody's contracts for 2 years, so check that one off. Superintendent board goals, I had said that was going to be at tonight's meeting, and I would like to have that take place at the October 27th work session in 2 weeks. So we'll do superintendent board goals in 2 weeks. And then superintendent preliminary evaluation, I at least have talked to board leadership about wanting more frequent check-ins on that. And so not formal evaluation pieces, but really having those strategically planned before my final evaluation in March. And so either looking at the work session in 2 weeks or maybe the November 10th board meeting for that. So I'll talk to board leadership about that. Youth Truth Revisited, we haven't talked a lot about Youth Truth. We weren't sure whether we were gonna be able to, last year was paid for the WSD. That wasn't the case this year, so we long story short is, we are going to do it again. Des did a great job of negotiating, and so, we'll be bringing that back in November and December, so more to come on that. Something that wasn't on your radar that I'd like to get on your radar is to bring NMYA, North Marion, Youth Athletics back to the board for a conversation. Both, I think it's great for you to hear the work that they're doing with our youth just across the board. But we really do need to revisit the middle school football and cheer conversation that we started with them last year. And if I can get them to the October work session in 2 weeks, I will do that. If not, it'll be November, but I'm willing to have them here in 2 weeks if I can get them here, and they're busy people. So that needs to get brought up. Tucker called me today and said, hey, are you okay if we have a couple swimmers that we get into either what's called a co-op, we know a little bit about that. Or there's also another option called a collective, where in individual sports, you could go, like if you're a wrestler and like, let's say, I'll just pick an example, Jervis, they want to have their kids be Jervis wrestlers, but then maybe they didn't have a coach, and so they come play, they would practice with our team, but when they're wrestling, they're wearing a Jervis uniform, their points and things go to Jervis. That's called a collective. And so Tucker is exploring that. I'm only putting on your radar because whether it's a co-op or a collective, it will require board approval. So if Tucker can land on a district to have a couple swimmers swim for them, I'll bring that back to you. Lastly, doing pretty good. I know I said in my email about how amazing homecoming was last week. I think it was a lot of good things happening for our community. I know it was a little crazy when we started talking about having all of our varsity sports compete on Thursday night. I know that was a big undertaking, especially on Anita and other people's parts who had to who's taking tickets where, this, that, and the other, and all these different things that had to be worked out. I do think when I told them, and you could have the homecoming dance on Friday night versus Saturday, I think that we can get this done. So, but it was, I know I wasn't able to attend the bonfire. I shared pictures with you. I heard it was a great time. Our football team, I told you about the exciting from behind finish. That was just amazing to watch. But I gotta tell you a story, and Blake was right there with me when this happened. But, right there towards the very end, Lucas Fowler took a major hit, caught a ball, and just got nailed. And it was just one of those plays, the kid was flagged for a helmet to helmet contact, but it is kind of one of those nature of the games where you're running full steam catching a ball and someone's coming to hit you and it happened right at the same time. And, you know, Lucas didn't move for a little bit there and, you know, our players took a knee, the Regis players took a knee and it was quiet. It was absolutely quiet. And, you know, eventually, you know, coaches got out there, Tucker was right there, you know, finding out Lucas is gonna be good, fine, gets up, walks off the field, that sort of thing. And what was really interesting and just really, you know, just speaks so highly of our players is that, like, how do you start getting lined up and in the trenches again when you just experienced something that was just like so like dramatic and scary? Because here's this kid, I mean, it was so quiet, you know, and everything, and you know, like, what are the feelings and emotions as these kids are lining up against each other and ready to go basically back into war against each other again? And, you know, are our players gonna be like, you know, gonna be too aggressive? And 2 or 3 of our linemen came up and they said, hey, we know you guys didn't need to do that, mean to do that on purpose, no hard feelings. They started shaking hands with our guys, with their guys, before the next play, you know, and it just really kind of broke the ice a little bit there and, you know, just created a sense of like, it just felt so good. And so I looked over to Blake and I said, I bet you Coach Arnold told the players to go do that. And so after the game, I went and congratulated Coach Arnold on the win. I told him that. I said, did you tell your guys to go do that? Just as a way to help them, because they're teenagers, they need help.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, but that's the culture we're trying to create here. But he was amazed and he's glad I told him that story. But that is really the kind of kids we have. I also think it's a real, even though Coach Arnold didn't tell him to do that, I think it's indicative of the culture he's created there. And I just thought you guys should know that story. It was pretty beautiful to watch. So
good.
that is my report. I guess it was 10 minutes. That's not too bad. So that's it.
So before we adjourn, I do wanna just echo, I put a tall standing 1 week order out there. For to have a cashless system in place, and it was met and received well. So I just wanna thank you for honoring that little tidbit I put in there. And then also, just to echo the admin team, just from district level, high school level, and all the school levels, about how wonderful it is to see the collaboration across the district. And to be in the snack shack and witness taking care of all the children. It wasn't like a separate individual like sports thing. It was like, these are our students, like all of them. And to be able to see the elementary kids out playing at the same time, it really is our culture of family and caring that I love. And so I want to thank you for great leadership across it. And shout out to Tucker, you worked your tail off.
Yes.
So now I will adjourn the meeting. Okay, adjourned at, what time is it? 7:38.